Hey guys, it's Miss Kendig here. Today we're going to look at writing linear equations when we are given a word problem. Now there are 4 different types that we're going to focus on. You've already learned all of these formulas, so that won't be new. I just want to show you how to take a word problem and incorporate the formulas into finding the answers. Now, so when we look at slope-intercept form, this is type number 1. There are a few notes that we need to write. We're going to use this form. Actually, we're going to use this formula, the slope-intercept formula. You remember that is y equals mx plus b. So y equals mx plus b. That's our formula. We're going to use that when given a rate of change and a starting point. So we are going to use when given a rate of change and the rate of change, remember, is the slope. It is represented by the letter m and a starting point. Now the starting point is going to be the b, the y-intercept. So that's what we're going to look at. Number 1, Evan is going to the county fair for this weekend. The admission to the fair is $5 and the cost per ride is 50 cents. If his parents gave him $20, write and solve a linear equation to find how many rides he can go on. All right, so we need to first figure out the slope. Now remember, the slope is how much he can get or how much each ride costs. So it cost 50 cents per ride. So we got to write 50 cents as a decimal, so it would be 0.50. Now the y-intercept, remember the y-intercept is the b, and it's going to be how much it's going to cost him to get into the fair. It says the admission to the fair is $5, so the b is $5, okay? Now, what you want to do is you want to take y equals mx plus b, and you want to plug those in. So y equals, the m is the slope. How much does it cost per ride is 0.50. And then we're going to keep our x. And then we're going to add the $5 admission fee to that. And when we add the $5 admission fee to that, that's the y-intercept. So that is the first part because it says write and solve a linear equation. So this is the linear equation. Now to solve it, it says if his parents gave him $20, right? So the amount of money that he starts with, they're wanting to say, okay, if he gives $20, this is really important information, gives $20, how many rides can he go on? So we're going to take the $20, that's the amount he's given, so that's our y. So y equals $20, right? And then we're going to say, okay, 20 equals, we're just plugging it into the equation that we just made right here. So 20 equals 0.050x plus $5, right? Okay, so what we know is we got to say, all right, we've got to solve for x. In this case, let's draw our line here. Now, we're solving for x, so we got to get x on a side by itself. We've got to get rid of this b, this y-intercept. The opposite of plus 5 is minus 5, so we got to take away $5. Okay, 20 minus 5 is 15 equals 0.50x. We got to divide by 0.50. Now you can use a calculator. Remember, from here on out, you can use a calculator every time. So those two cancel, and x equals, now 15 divided by 0.5 is 30. So he can go on 30 rides at the fair after he pays his admission fee. All right, so there we go. Let's move on to number 2. While visiting Crimson Lake, Sally decided to go kayaking. The rangers charge $8.50 per hour in admission. Okay, that's important. $8.50 per hour. In addition to a $25 deposit to rent the kayak. If she rented the kayak from 11:30 until 2:30, write and solve a linear equation to find the total cost to rent the kayak. Now, we've got to start with, okay, how much is it each hour? That's our slope, remember? And how much was it each hour? It was $8.50. So we got to say $8.50. $8.50 per hour. Now, what is the starting point? What do we got to pay just to rent the kayak? We got to pay $25 to rent the kayak. $25 to rent the kayak. Okay? Now, we're going to put that into the formula. So keep your y equals mx plus b. The m is $8.50. Keep your x plus your $25 fee. So that is going to be the equation that we're going to use. All right. With that, we can determine how much Sally would pay in this particular situation. So in this particular situation, she wants to rent the kayak from 11:30 until 2:30. So we've got to see how many hours that is. So 11:30 to 12:30 is 1, 12:30 to 1:30 is 2, 1:30 to 2:30 is 3. So she needs to rent the kayak for 3 hours. 3 hours. All right, so where are we going to put the 3 in? Well, it's $8.50 an hour, so 3 goes in place of the x. 3 goes in place of the x, right? So we got to say, okay, y equals $8.50 times our 3 hours that we're going to rent it, plus the $25 fee. All right, we're just going to solve it. Y equals $8.50 times 3 plus 25. All right, so get out your calculator. Make sure that you are looking at your calculator, not your cell phone now, your calculator. And we've got $8.50 times 3. And that's going to give me $25.50. So $25.50 plus 25, because 25 is the starting point. It's going to be the B, right? How much she's going to have to deposit to rent the kayak. When we add those two together, y equals $50.50. $50. So it would cost for renting the kayak for 3 hours, it would cost $50.50. Sorry about that. All right, let's look at number 2. Or actually, it will be number 5, but it'll be type 2. I don't know why it's doing this. Give me just a second. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on. Let's go back. All right, this is acting crazy on me, but we're going to open it back up. All right, here we go. Type number 2, standard form. Now remember, standard form is AX. Let me get this going here for us. AX plus BY equals C. All right, AX plus BY equals C. So standard form, we're going to use this when the problem relates to different objects. So you're going to use when the problem relates to different objects. All right. Now, so in looking at number 5, Sam ordered 2 hamburgers and 3 hot dogs from the concession stand at the baseball game. His bill came to $19.05. If hamburgers cost $5.25 each, write and solve a linear equation to find the cost of each hot dog. Okay, so what we know is our X is going to be our hamburgers, okay, and we're giving our X our hamburgers, and Y is going to represent our hot dogs, okay, because he can order either one from the concession stand. All right, so how many hamburgers? Okay, so it says 2 hamburgers, so we got to say 2X. Plus, how many hot dogs? So this was 2 hamburgers there. 3 hot dogs. So we got to say plus 3Y. And we're going to set that equal to how much he paid in all, right? So he paid $19.05. That was the total. So we're going to set that to $19.05. Now that is our linear equation. Okay, so that's the linear equation. Now we want to know how many hot dogs could he buy if a hamburger is $5.25. So in place of the hamburger, that's the X, right? The hamburger is the X. So we need to put in $5.25 in place of the X. So X is going to equal $5.25 because that's how much a hamburger cost. Okay, so we're going to say 2. We're using the same equation. Place in your $5.25. Add your 3Y to it. Equals $19.05. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and solve this equation. I'm going to blow this up a little bit so you can see it a little better. Draw our line. We're going to say 2 times $5.25. So $5.25 times 2, you can enter that in your calculator. We get $10.50. $10.50 plus 3Y equals $19.05. We're solving for Y because we want to know how many hot dogs he can buy for that amount of money. So the opposite of $10.50 is negative $10.50. If I do it to one side, I do it to the other. We have 3Y equals $19.05 minus the $10.50. Enter that in your calculator and you get $8.55. Now you're going to divide by 3 on both sides. So our Y is going to equal, once we divide by 3, it'll equal $2.85. $2.85. So it wanted to know how much would a hot dog cost. A hot dog would cost $2.85. So that's the second part. Okay? Remember, the cost of the hamburger was the X. The cost of the hot dog is the Y. All right, let's look at the next one. It says, tickets at a school play cost $4 in advance or $5 at the door. Total ticket sales for an evening production were $440. So we just need to, let's underline this. 4 in advance, 5 at the door. They made $440. If no tickets were sold in advance, no tickets, okay, that's important. Then write and solve a linear equation to find how many tickets were sold at the door. Okay, so here we go. We got to say, okay, let's say X is going to be the advance, the one sold in advance. And we're going to say Y is going to be the one sold at the door. Okay, remember, we're relating 2 different objects, the one sold in advance, the one sold at the door. Now, how much were the ones sold in advance? It said $4 in advance. So we got to say 4 times X, because remember, we're using AX plus BY equals C. Okay? So the A is the $4, because that's how much an advance ticket was. And the B is going to be $5, because that's how much they're sold at the door. And so that would be 5Y. And how much did they make? They made $440. So that's our equation. That's our equation. Now, we've got to say, okay, if no tickets were sold in advance, so X was a ticket sold in advance, right? If there are none, that would be 0. So in this equation, we have to put in a 0 for the X, okay? because those were the ones sold in advance, plus 5y equals 440. We're going to solve this. I'm going to blow it up just a little bit so you can see it better. Now, anything times 0 is what? You're right, 0, right? So we can cancel that out, all right? So then bring down your 5y equals 440. We've got to divide by 5 on both sides because 5 is being multiplied by y. So y equals 440 divided by 5. Use your calculator and you will get 88 tickets. So we know that 88 tickets were sold at the door. If none of them were sold in advance, so our two answers would be this equation here, 4x plus 5y equals 440. And we know that 88 tickets would be sold at the door if 0 tickets were sold in advance. All right, let's keep on keeping on. Turn to the back. It says this time type 3 is point slope formula. Point and slope. Remember what that means. That means you are given a point and you are given a slope. Okay, so the point slope formula, if you remember right, that's what we did just here recently. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. Okay? All right, now the notes on this, we're going to use this when the problem gives, a sample point and a rate of change. So use this when the problem gives a sample point. Let's see, let me get this straight. When the problem gives a sample point, okay, and remember that point is going to be x comma y because our x value in an ordered pair comes first, and then they're going to give you a rate of change. Now, remember the rate of change is always the same. That is the slope. That is the m. So the rate of change is always the m. So let's look at number 9. At Eagle Bay, it costs $12 an hour to rent a canoe. All right, that's important. $12 an hour to rent the canoe. All right. Nate and his friends rented a canoe for 4 hours and paid $68. Okay, that's pretty important. Let's underline that. 4 hours and paid $68. Write and solve a linear equation to find the cost to rent the canoe for 7 hours. So we got to have an equation, and then we got to say how much is it going to be after 7 hours. All right, so let's look up at our x and our y, so our ordered pair, right? Let's look at our ordered pair, and let's look at our rate of change, our slope. Okay, so for the slope, we're going to look and see, all right, it says, how much does it cost to rent a canoe? It's going to cost $12 per hour. So that means that our $12 or our 12 is going to be our rate of change. That's our M. All right. Now we're going to make a point with this information. 4 hours is going to cost us how much money? $68. So our 4 is going to be our X sub 1 and our 68 is going to be our Y sub 1. All right, now we've got to plug these in using the formula I wrote up at the top. So y minus our y sub 1 is 68 equals, what is our rate of change or our slope? That's 12, that's the m. And then we're going to have times x minus our x sub 1 is 4. Now we're going to just go ahead and solve this, right? Go ahead and solve it for y. So we got to first distribute, right? Here. All right, bring down your y minus 68. Now 12 times x is 12x. 12 times negative 4. A positive times a negative is a negative. 12 times 4 is 48. Now, then we want to solve for y. So the opposite of negative 68 is positive 68. If we do it to one side, we do it to the other. That cancels. I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger for you guys. And then we get y equals, bring down your 12x, and then negative 48 plus 68. The signs are different, so you subtract and keep the sign of the larger, and you get a positive 20. Now that is our linear equation, all right? Now, what we need to do at this point, it says, how much is it going to cost to rent the canoe for 7 hours? 7 hours, all right? So what you have to do is, in place of the x, we got to put a 7 because they're telling us that's how much it's going to be. 7 hours is what we're wanting to rent it for. So use this equation here. Y equals 12, and then keep your 7 in place of the x right here, and then add your 20 to it. Okay, I'm going to move this over a little bit so we can see a little bit better. Bring down your y. So now we're going to say 7 times 12, all right? So we got to say 7 times 12. Go ahead, if you don't know it out off the top of your head, put it in your calculator, but it's 84. 84 plus your 20, so your y is going to equal 104. So it's going to cost us $104 to rent the canoe for 7 hours, right? $104 to rent the canoe for 7 hours. So now we have the equation and we have the amount that it would cost for 7 hours. All right, let's go to the next one. A construction company charges $18 per hour. That's pretty important. For debris removal, plus a one-time fee for the use of the trash dumpster. The total fee for 8 hours of service, was $219. Write and solve a linear equation to find the one-time fee for the trash dumpster. Okay, it's a one-time fee for the trash dumpster. Okay, this is what we got to first find. Let's find our M, our rate of change. How much is it going to cost per hour? It's going to cost 18. That's our M. All right, now we got to make a point out of the information they gave us. They said, okay, 8 hours of service was going to be $219. So 8 is our X sub 1. 219 is our Y sub 1. All right, we're going to use the formula and we're going to fill it in. All right, use the formula and fill it in. The actual point slope formula. So we're going to say y minus y sub 1 is 219 equals, what's our slope? Our slope is 18. We're going to multiply that times x minus, what's our x sub 1? Our x sub 1 is 8. We're going to solve for y. We're going to bring this down. Y minus 219 equals. Now, we've got to go through here and distribute through. Okay? When we distribute through, we've got 18 times x is 18x. Put this in your calculator if you don't know. 18 times negative 8, well, a positive times a negative is a negative. 18 times 8 is 144. Now, we're going to add 219 to both sides because our goal is to get y by itself. If we do it to one side, we do it to the other. So we got these two are going to cancel. Y equals 18x. And then we've got to say negative 144 plus 219. Now, if you can do it in your head, that's fine. You subtract and keep the sign of the greater since the signs are opposite. Or you could just put it in your calculator. Either way, you're going to get a positive 75 left. Okay, so y equals 18x plus 75. That's our equation. Now, they want to know what the one-time fee is. Now, we've already talked about the y-intercept back on the other side, the front side of this paper. We said the starting point, or the y-intercept, is the starting point, right? That's like a one-time fee. So let me go ahead and show you. If I write this down over here, our equation is y equals 18x plus 75. Well, what's the y-intercept? The y-intercept is 75, right? So we know that if we were going to graph this equation, we would go up 75 and start on the y-axis at 75. All right? That is the one-time fee. That's the one-time fee. Okay? So our answer to the second part is $75. That's the one-time fee. All right? Now, X is going to be the number of hours that we rent the dumpster, right? Just so that you know, they didn't ask us that, but just so you know, X is the number of hours that they will rent the dumpster. All right? So let's go on to the next part. This is 2 points. Now, remember when you're given 2 points, you're given 2 sets of information, all right? You're given 2 x and y coordinates. So you're going to use this when the problem gives 2 sample points, okay? So use when the problem gives 2 sample points. Okay, now what does that mean? Now we've done this as well, and we did this before break, before Christmas break. So we got x sub 1, y sub 1. Okay, there's a comma between that. And you're given x sub 2, y sub 2. So you're given 2 different points. So let's dive into this. Number 13, to surf the internet for 15 minutes at an airport, it costs $4.05. 15 minutes at an airport, it costs $4.05. It used to cost us, we used to have to pay per minute that we surf the internet, right? Now it's unlimited, but this is going back some time. For 40 minutes, it costs $5.80. Write and solve a linear equation to find the cost for surfing the web for 1 hour. All right, so let's see. We got to have 2 points. So the first point is going to be 15 minutes and $4.05. Okay, this is my x sub 1, my y sub 1. Okay, now the second point that we have is going to be 40 minutes, and it's going to cost $5.80. So this is my x sub 2, y sub 2. All right, now we've got to find the slope. Okay, we've got to find the slope. So remember, to find the slope with 2 points, you got to use 2 different equations. M equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. This gives me the slope. Then we have to use the point slope formula that we just used at type 3. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. Okay, then we got to use that one to get the equation. All right, so let's find the slope. Here we go. I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger. So here we go. We got m equals y sub 2 is $5.80 minus y sub 1 is $4.05. And we got to put that over x sub 2, which is 40, minus x sub 1, which is 15. All right, so 580 minus 405, and I'm actually going to go down with this, not across. M equals, that's going to give me $1.75. Once I do the math, use your calculator if you need to. 40 minus 15 is 25. When I do that math and put that in the calculator, remember you would type 1.75 divided by 25. I'm going to get my slope, and that's going to be 0.07. So that's important because we have to use that in our formula. Now, remember, it doesn't matter once you switch to the point slope formula which point you use. You can use the first or you can use the second. I'm actually going to use the first because the numbers are smaller. So I'm going to use this point here. So now we got to say y minus, what's our y sub 1? Well, our y sub 1 is 405 equals, what's our slope? We just found it right here. Our slope is 0.07. And then what we have to do is we have to multiply that times x minus, and our x sub 1 in this point that we're using here is the x sub 1, I can't see it, 15. Okay, now we're going to solve this equation. This is going to give us our equation. All right, so we got to say, okay, y minus 405 equals 0.07 times x is 0.07x. Now then we got to multiply 0.07 times negative 15. A positive times a negative is a negative, so let's go ahead and put that down, negative. And then when you say 15 times 0.07, you get negative 1.05. All right, now we want to add 4.05 to both sides. Remember, we're adding numbers with numbers, so we want to write the numbers up and down from each other. All right, we have y equals 0.07x. Now, negative 1.05 plus 4.05. Remember, if you do it in your head, you have to subtract and keep the sign of the greater. which the greater one is 405, so we're going to have a positive. When we subtract, we get the number 3. Okay, so here is our equation. All right, there's our equation. Now, it says, how much is it going to cost for surfing the web for 1 hour? So 1 hour equals how many minutes? 1 hour equals 60 minutes, right? 1 hour equals 60 minutes, and that is going to be our x, the amount of time. Okay? So now we got to, in place of x, we got to go put in this 60 minutes. So we got y equals 0.07 times 60, because that's the x, the amount of time, plus our 3. So when we work this out, we've got 0.07 times 60, and that's going to give me $4.20 plus 3. So when I add those together, 420 plus 3 gives me $7.20. So it would cost me $7.20 to surf the internet or the web for 1 hour. All right, let's look at number 14. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius or 212 Fahrenheit. Water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. If the weather forecaster says it will be 25 degrees Celsius today, write and solve a linear equation to find what Fahrenheit temperature this is. All right, so we know some pertinent information. Okay, we know that 100 degrees Celsius is 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is going to be my x sub 1, my y sub 1. Then we know that 0 degrees Celsius is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's my second point. 0 degrees Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's going to be my x sub 2, y sub 2. Now we got to find the slope of this. Okay, so let's say y sub 2, which is 32, minus y sub 1, which is 212, over x sub 2, which is 0, minus x sub 1, which is 100. 32 minus 212 is negative 180. If you didn't know that, use a calculator. And then 0 minus 100 is negative 100. We know that a negative over a negative gives us a positive, and if we put this in our calculator, 180 divided by 100, we'll get 1.8. So this is my slope. Now, it doesn't matter which point that you use, and I'm actually going to use the second point in this one because anything with a 0 is easier to multiply by. So I'm going to use this. So it's going to become my x1 and this is going to become my x1 and my y1 because it doesn't matter which point you use. Y minus my y sub 1 is 32 equals, what's my slope? I just found it here, 1.8. Got to multiply that times x minus my x sub 1 is 0. Okay, let's solve this equation. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. All right, we're going to say y minus 32 equals 1.8 times x is 1.8x. Anything times 0 is 0, so we don't have to write that. Now we need to solve for y. Opposite of negative 32 is positive 32. If I do it to one side, I do it to the other. Since this is just a number, I'm putting it at the end because we cannot combine letters and numbers. Remember, letters combine with letters, numbers combine with numbers. So we just write this down. We bring it down. 1.8x plus 32. Now this is my actual linear equation, right? That was the first thing they wanted. Now, if the weather forecaster says it'll be 25 degrees Celsius, okay, 25 degrees Celsius. So we've got to go back into this equation that we just did, and we got to say, okay, our x is going to be 25 degrees Celsius. That's what they told us. They want to know what's it going to be Fahrenheit. Okay, so we got to go plug that back in. So we're going to say, okay, y equals 1.8 times 25, because that's the X represents the degrees Celsius. And we're going to add our 32. Just add the 32 here. Just bring that down. All right. Y equals 1.8 times 25. Now, if you're not sure of this, you're going to put this in your calculator. 1.8 times 25, and you get 45. 45 plus 32 equals what? Well, when you add 45 and 32, just put it in your calculator. You'll get 77 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, 77 degrees Fahrenheit. So if it were 25 degrees outside, if it was 25 Celsius, it would be 77 Fahrenheit. Now you should be able to work on your IXL skills. And remember, it's S.25 and S.26. None of them have word problems on them, but you have your notes from yesterday and the day before.